Why, hello, and welcome to the 22nd annual Satchmo Summerfest presented by Chevron. The thing I like about Chevron is their logo is a chevron. There it is. So this is Satchmo Summerfest presented by Chevron. You find yourself at the Satchmo Legacy Stage in memory of Joni Berry. More on her in a moment. This is the only festival in Louisiana dedicated to Louis Armstrong and is produced by French Quarter Festivals Incorporated. Give them a big hand. Very small staff. They do great stuff. And the organization is a nonprofit showcasing New Orleans culture and heritage since 1984. Orwell would like that, I guess. This festival is made possible through the generosity of our sponsors and supported through your purchase of festival merchandise and delicious beverages, which are available downstairs outside, and be responsible, especially for the latter portions. I want to thank all of our sponsors, especially Chevron, of course, the New Orleans Jazz Museum, our hosts. Also, the Joseph K. and Inez Eichenbaum Foundation and Mr. Stephen Maitland-Lewis, who are sponsoring this stage in memory of Joni Berry. She was the wife of Stephen Maitland-Lewis and was a great friend of this festival, and she passed away recently, and so we're dedicating this stage to her once again this year. Yes. Also, the Ella Fitzgerald Charitable Foundation. Janice, folks. Janice, take a bow over there. Our friends from New Jersey, Richie and Vicky Norigian, who are not here this year, but give them a hand too. They might be watching on a live stream. And Andrea Duplessis. Take a bow, Andrea. A great friend of jazz in New Orleans for a very long time. Also, I'd like to remind you that first, some of you have embarrassing ringtones, so turn it off, because, I don't want to hear Stephen with his, Beyonce ringtone. Let's say streaming at the NOLA Jazz Museum, all these events, and you could look at them again if you enjoy them when you come back. You could relive the experience. Also on the YouTube page of French Quarter Festival and the Facebook pages and all that stuff, and they're there forever. Also, if you come back for a later session and there's no room at the end, there is a outdoor overflow room. You go outside the building, and there's a nice room where this is all simulcast, so hello to those in the overflow room. We are starting today with an interview with Lawrence Cotton. Give him a hand, certainly. I will just say of him that he is the oldest jazz musician working in New Orleans today. Yeah. I'll let him fill in the rest, and to guide him through that, we have the great Gwen Thompkins. Of course, she's a longtime NPR correspondent, the host of Music Inside Out, which they are still hosting, where they're still doing the interviews, but it is on hiatus while she completes a book. I'd just like to always say, of course, she wrote the introduction to the new version of my favorite person who ever lived, Danny Barker's My Life in Jazz. That's right. No.
Barker.
Danny
Life in Jazz.
That's what I said. I was right the first time. Don't question yourself, John. The reason that show is on hiatus, Music Inside Out, is because she is at work on a book with the University of North Carolina Press entitled The Thrill is So Divine, The Power of New Orleans in American Popular Music, and ain't that the truth? So I give you, to act as our guide through Lawrence Cotton's life, Ms. Gwendolyn Thompkins.
Hello, thank you, John, and thank you to Satchmo Fest. I love coming here every year. It is one of my most favorite festivals. In fact, I think it might be my favorite festival here in New Orleans, because in large part because I love Louis Armstrong so much. I love Louis Armstrong. Did I mention I love Louis Armstrong, all right? And then also because it's a great opportunity to see Ricky Riccardi, who we'll see later on today, excuse me, the curator of the Louis Armstrong Archive in Corona, Queens, and so many other guests who are going to be, sharing with us different aspects of Armstrong's genius, his contributions, his life. But beware of musical categories. This is my message to you all. Beware of musical categories, because often they're more about dividing musicians than they are about better understanding a song. In the early 20th century, record companies began dividing and conquering music lovers by selling what they called race records in the early 20th century because they thought white people would not want to hear music made by black musicians and vice versa. But that has never been true, right? And more than 100 years later, people who enjoy music and think about music and write about music were still dividing music along racial lines. Urban music, progressive rock, alternative, police, right? And despite the hair and the costumes and the accents, there's very little difference between musicians. And that's because everybody who makes music wants to make something that sounds good. Louis Armstrong used to say that in New Orleans, no one worried about naming categories. It was all music. And today, as John said, we're lucky to hear from a musician who started out on piano in the 1950s with Guitar Slim, and who also played with T-Bone Walker, with Big Joe Turner, with Dave Bartholomew and Teddy Riley, and he's now a master practitioner of music at Preservation Hall. Lawrence Cotton also leads his own band called the Lawrence Cotton Legendary Experience, and I know that you are, because I am. We're thrilled to see him today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lawrence Cotton. Plenty is up, Mr. Cotton. Plenty is up, and I can't wait to ask you some questions about your life, about your music, about your contributions to music. And so, would you mind if we start with some of your earliest years here in New Orleans? You grew up in uptown New Orleans. What streets were you growing up on?
Between Napoleon Avenue and Jefferson Avenue, about 20 blocks from Audubon Park.
Wow.
Uptown, yes.
Yeah, and have you stayed there your whole life?
All my life. I've been on that street 80 some years, 88, 89 years. And I went out for 6 years. I went to service for 3.
Yep.
And then I played with Guitar Slim for 3.
Yeah.
So that makes 95, right?
Yes. So that makes 95. It's true. So you've been around the world, but you keep coming back to that one part of uptown New Orleans, right?
All my life.
Good for you.
This and the King of Bell Castle Street.
Y'all don't flood up there, though, do you?
No, it doesn't.
That's right. That's your secret.
Yes.
All right then. And so, what do you remember when you were growing up? Do you remember any particular songs that you were hearing back then that you liked, that whenever you think about your early years, you think about those songs in your parents' house?
Not really.
No?
No. Looked like every 10 years of different songs, and everybody was familiar with it. Whatever songs were familiar at the time, that's what you try to play.
Yeah.
Because I had aunt, I had aunt, my dad's mother. He had 4 sisters, and 2 of the sisters had pianos, And I'd go around and jingle and find out different things that was happening, you know. One time, a blues after hours that was very famous, you know, and in the dark, I get such a romance in the dark.
I believe that.
Wow.
Anything can happen after dark.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. And so I've heard that your father was an amateur piano player,
Yes,
right?
he was. He worked on the riverfront, but he never did go downtown. And the sister, she was a comedian, but they could have had a team and went down here in the quarters, but they never did.
That's so interesting. And
I
so
know.
do you think that, I mean, because when you were growing up, there was a far bigger difference between uptown New Orleans and downtown New
You
Orleans.
better believe that.
And so talk a little bit about that. Like, why would your father or people like your dad not feel comfortable coming downtown?
I don't know, but everybody stayed uptown. There were some people, I think if they went to Canal Street, they would get lost.
Well, I believe that because, you know, Danny Barker used to talk about that, you know, talk about the fact that when there were jazz funerals or brass band funerals going through the neighborhoods of New Orleans, that so many neighborhoods, you know, I mean, we're not I mean,
Familiar
sort of
with
had
that.
lines of demarcation.
Right.
So they would let the band through, but they weren't necessarily interested in seeing people from other neighborhoods come in and come through their neighborhood. Had you noticed anything like that?
No, I forgot what musician was famous and they had that type of thing for him. And
Yeah.
that's the first time I'd ever seen it.
Right, like a brass band jazz funeral.
A funeral, yes. That's
Yeah.
the first time I'd ever seen that.
That's interesting. That's
Uptown, they
interesting.
never did anything like that.
Yeah.
They had you had to pay your rent. My daddy, he could play and he'd get the money for the play. And then it was Lotto,
Lotto.
$5. I mean, a nickel will get you $9.
Really?
My daddy, he's lucky sometimes, you know, he put a dime, $18, man. See.
And so he had to choose the right number?
Yeah, 5, 10, and 40. That was very famous.
Did he have any favorite numbers?
I'm telling you, 5, 10, and 40.
What are your favorite numbers?
Oh, I don't have any particular number. No, I never played. I never gambled. I never was a gambler.
You know the authorities are not here. You know that, right?
But I'm saying, but when I was in the service, I went into service 1946. The war was over, but I call it the Cold War.
Right.
And then, and when you get paid, you go into the train and the guys be shooting dice, man.
Yeah.
I put some down, and I'd get a big, hey, get a bunch, and I'm gone. I didn't stick around because you lose what you have, you know, you get greedy.
Well, that's true. But you did you said 5, 10, 40 though, right?
5, 10, and 40. 5, 10, and 40.
Oh, 5, 10, and 40. All right, all right. You all may remember that as well. Okay, so, and your mom, did she work outside the house?
No, she lived around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
We live on Bell Castle, 52 blocks from Canal Street, 8 blocks from the river.
Wow.
And the place where she worked is on the corner, a development for two families. The Bowmans had one son. His name was David, and I forgot the other name, Chapman. Chapman had a son and a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived and my mama, she'd be gone 9 hours a day, man.
Doing what?
Whatever was going on over there.
Wow.
And she'd come home with a little plate, and then she had to fix something for us.
Right.
You know, and that's the way it was. And my dad, I was there most of the time by myself.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother, but they was playing ball one day, and he running after the ball, and this guy backed out, and my brother had fallen down, and he rolled over him. He's murdered, you know.
No.
And at that time, nobody was suing anybody or anything. We didn't get anything for it, you know, but he was 8 and I was 4.
He was your older brother.
That's the only one I had.
Yeah. And what was his name?
Walter.
Walter.
We used to call him Walter James Cotton, WJ we used to call him.
WJ.
That's what they called him. I wasn't old enough to really know him.
Exactly, 4 years old. And so at what point did you, as a youngster, decide or notice that you had a particular interest in music?
I don't know, because my dad, we had a piano in the house, and sometimes he'd get up there and he'd play, and he'd bring his friends to the house sometime, and he'd play different things. And one time I was amazed at one guy, he played all the black keys.
The minors.
He playing all the black keys, you know.
Was it sad music?
And I just looked at him and different things that he was doing. It was either G flat or with F sharp or G flat. And I was wondering, I didn't know what was going on at that time. I didn't find out about that until after I got out the service. I got out in 1949. It was the Army Air Corps.
Right, right.